I think we have the option to enforce that or not enforce that, but for everybody's safety and well-being and comfort, you might want to try doing that if you feel comfortable with that. We do want to report out there, let you know that there's a merch table right here up front. Chuck, did you put all that money in there?
I put $40 in fives so people can get change.
That's right. You can reach in there and grab that and take a CD at the same time. You're paying people to take those CDs now, right?
Well,
nah. During these special times, right? A COVID special. Well, let's fill up the tip jar right there, and feel free to come up, and if you feel like supplementing Chuck, just drop money in that thing, and it'll accept all denominations of money. And I don't think there's really a limit. If it overflows, we'll just get another jar. So, Chuck, if they do decide to come up and get a CD, what's the cost on the CDs?
They're all 15 except the double live one is 20. So if you want to stick a $20 bill in there for one of the other ones and pull a 5 out for change, you can do that.
And you can get 3 for $45, right?
Yeah.
How many of you guys have seen Chuck before? All right, great. Well, he's a great songwriter, lots of different subjects, baseball being one of them, and family, I think, being another one. At least that's my interpretation of some of the songs from my own family. And he tells me he's going to have a lot of fodder to write after 2020, none of involving COVID, of course, just involving other issues that we have faced here in the past year. Fortunately, we've only got one more month to go, and we'll be finished, I think, hopefully. Let's keep our fingers crossed anyway. So we do appreciate you guys coming out and supporting us and supporting the staff and supporting Chuck. So if you guys are ready for a little bit of music, would you please put your hands together and make welcome Chuck Brodsky.
Thank you. A real live audience. Unbelievable. Just like the old days. Well, since Christmas time is almost upon us, I thought I'd start with a song about a very special gift that was given at Christmas time. This is called A Toast to the Woman in the Holler. Catherine's boyfriend played saxophone. Catherine wanted a flute. There was one in the window of the music store that happened to be a real beaut. But Mommy couldn't afford it. This much Catherine knew. Still she stood there a few minutes dreaming, knowing that it wouldn't come true. Christmas time was a-comin'. Catherine had the blues, and her mom asked her what she wanted. Catherine didn't tell the truth. She knew there wasn't the money, not even for one to rent. But the only thing that Catherine really wanted was to play an instrument. Catherine cried for a month in her bedroom when she had to quit the school band. Now the woman who lived in the holler, she cried about the second hand and the goodness gathered within her, and it fluttered like butterflies. She, in a vision, released them. She watched them take to the skies. Now on a very cold night in December, maybe the coldest night of the year, the woman that lived in the holler, she cried a few secret tears for those last few moments of glory, and the glories that had all been before, and the times it had been there to rescue her. She set her flute down by the door. Well, now people, they whisper about her. The locals say she's a witch, although she'd be the first to come help them if they ended up in a ditch. And those candles she lights at her altar, well, they burn as a gesture of love, the kind they talk about in the churches, but they know so little of. And so it's one day just after Christmas, and Catherine wore her new hat. Her mom brought her out to the holler. The woman was there with her cats. Catherine had no idea. Well, maybe someday she would, but what she would soon be receiving was being given for a greater good. So here's to the sweet gift of music. Here's to the power of song. Here's a toast to the woman in the holler for passing these things along. Well, the case, it was covered with stickers, the words that this woman had scrawled from the magic places that she had been to, trinkets from her own Mardi Gras. And it all meant nothing to Catherine, 'cause it wasn't her story to tell. She'll have her own words and stickers should she ever fall under the spell. And so it's Catherine's turn now to hold her. Here's hoping she'll learn how to play. Maybe she'll drop by the holler to visit this woman someday. Maybe she'll come with her boyfriend, the one that plays saxophone. Maybe they'll play for the woman a few things they made up on their own. Here's to the sweet gift of music. Here's to the power of song. Here's a toast to the woman in the holler for passing these things along.
Thank you very much. I haven't heard applause in months and months and months. It's cool. It's nice. Also nice that I am singing this song in a place where I don't have to explain what a holler is. I've sung this song all over the world, and sometimes I have asked, do y'all know what a holler is? And you wouldn't believe how many times people have called out, you mean a shout? No. Well, I was in Denmark recently. There was a little window back in September when it was actually safe to go over there and tour. They were allowed to have indoor shows with as many as 100 people. And so this tour had been in the works for about a year and a half. And I kind of treated it day by day. I didn't know until about a month before the tour whether I really would go or not. But it turned out it was safe to go. And the entire time I was over there, people kept asking me, what the hell is going on back in your country? And, you know, it fell on me to explain it night after night everywhere I went. And all I could think of saying to people was, you know what, half the people in this country are absolutely crazy. And the other half are completely insane.
Well, half the people are looking to rumble, and the other half are spoiling for a fight. The logic that they're using is all jumbled, but who needs facts when you know you're right? Well, half the people nowadays are bonkers, and the other half have all lost their minds. Everybody, everywhere looks angry, and they need to blame somebody for their pain. Now half the news you get today is phony, and the other half you get today is fake. But what's real is the independent journalist who gets tortured but refuses to break. Well, half the people have lost their marbles, and the other half have all lost their minds. On top of that, we've become so heartless. Underneath it all, we must have lost our spines. Well, half the people are just plain cuckoo, and the other half are just plain Looney Tunes. Bite your tongue, you can't talk sense to any of them. They hate you when you burst their balloons. Now half the people have gone crazy, and the other half have all gone mad. Well, I could make a fortune selling bridges if I hadn't sold the last one that I had. Well, half the people have no idea, and the other half, they haven't got a clue. They'll believe anything anyone will tell them, unless it can be proven to be true. Well, half the people are just plain cuckoo, and the other half are just plain Looney Tunes. Bite your tongue, you can't talk sense to any of them. They hate you when you burst their balloons. Now half the people are talking rubbish, and the other half are all just talking crap. Well, you've got to be careful and remind yourself not to take the bait or step into the trap. 'Cause half the people these days are bonkers, and the other half have all gone insane. Everybody, everywhere looks angry, and they need to blame somebody for their pain. Well, half the people are just plain cuckoo, and the other half are just plain Looney Tunes. Bite your tongue, you can't talk sense to any of them. They hate you when you burst their balloons. They hate you when you burst their balloons.
Thank you. I have a brand new song I'd like to sing you. I have never sung this publicly yet. I sang it on my live stream. If you're interested, I live stream from my house every Sunday. I've been doing it for tomorrow will be the 22nd week of my Sunday live streams. And I stream at 2 o'clock to my Facebook page and at 4 o'clock to my YouTube channel. And if you're interested in seeing any of the previous shows, all of the archives are on my YouTube channel. And they even have set lists in the comments, so you can see what songs I played for that show, and if there's a particular song you're ever looking to find, you can know which live stream it's on. So, I don't want to say anything to give the song away. It's so new I have not developed an introduction for it, but I also don't want to tell you too much about what it's about. So I'm just going to play it.
Today's a day you used to wonder would ever live to see. They finally brought the man to justice. What kind of justice will there be? Nobody knew a thing about him. He never talked about his past. It was a shock to all the neighbors when it caught up to him at last. He changed his name in Argentina. He grew a beard and dyed his hair. He bought a farm and raised a family, and even they were unaware. That's not the face that you remember. It's not the one that you despise. Today he's frail and he's remorseful. No skull and crossbones in his eyes. Today he's in his early 90s. Just a week ago he fell. Some want for him to die in prison. Some wish he'd just go straight to hell. He sits and listens to the charges. He does not offer a defense. He does not say he was his orders. He does not claim his innocence. He looks at you and not the jury. They will decide if he should live. He is not asking them for mercy. He could not ask you to forgive. He practiced how you would confront him. You thought you came to seek revenge. You thought that he was less than human. He used to look through that same lens. But when he whispered he was sorry, the only words that he would speak, that was the justice that you came for. You let him kiss you on the cheek. Today he's in his early 90s. And just a week ago he fell. Some wish that he'd go straight to prison. Some wish that he'd go straight to hell. But when he whispered he was sorry, the only words that he would speak, it was a justice that you came for. You let him kiss you on the cheek.
Thank you. That is, I think that's my 8th Holocaust story song. And I'll be compiling them all on one album in the very near future, I hope. This year, maybe even. Let's see. So, because it's Thanksgiving weekend, here's a story that took place on Thanksgiving about 50 years ago. And you may have seen some of the recent documentaries and TV specials about him. B.B. Cooper, the only person in the history of aviation to ever get away with hijacking an airplane.
carrying a briefcase when he stepped aboard the plane. Northwest 305 from Portland, on the tarmac in the rain, wearing loafers in a dark suit, underneath an overcoat, a white shirt with a black tie that was loose around the throat. And it was Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. He had on a pair of sunglasses, but there was not any sun. He used the name Dan Cooper when he paid for his flight that was going to Seattle on the cold and nasty night. They taxied down the runway, then took to the sky. And Cooper let a little bit of time go by before he called the flight attendant, told her to stay calm, and that inside his briefcase he said he had a bomb to $100,000 in $20 bills, a plane, a crew, some parachutes, and no one would get killed. They landed in Seattle. The authorities complied. All the passengers were let out, but the crew remained inside. The plane took off for Portland, just Cooper and the crew. It wasn't but an hour before he bid them all adieu. But first he tipped each one of them $2,000 apiece. He was such a nice man, they later told police. And out that little service doorway in the rear of the plane, Cooper jumped into the darkness, into the freezing rain. They say that with the wind chill, it was 69 below. Not much chance that he'd survive, but if he did, where did he go? Some guy who lived in Oregon by the name of D.B. Cooper was arrested and interrogated by a couple of state troopers, but it wasn't him who did it. The lawman had no luck, but the papers ran the story and the name D.B. Cooper stuck. And it was a little service doorway in the rear of the plane. Cooper jumped into the darkness, into the freezing rain. Was on a family picnic 8 or 9 years later. 6,000 muddy dollars found by a second grader on the banks of the Columbia. It would have been on his route. The authorities confirmed that it was part of Cooper's loot. Whoever D.B. Cooper was, today is still a mystery. It's the only unsolved skyjacking in aviation history. No one's ever tried to claim a very large reward. No one's ever seen him since he bailed out the door. The divers searched the river every summer still for an article of clothing or a $20 bill, a briefcase or a wallet, some kind of ID to determine who this D.B. Cooper might actually be.
Thank you. So here's a baseball song. It's kind of hard to believe I'm this far into my show and I haven't done a baseball song yet. For those of you that don't know me, I have 2 entire albums of original baseball songs. 22 of my baseball songs are in the National Baseball Hall of Fame recording library. I've done 3 concerts there over the years, and I haven't stopped writing them. In fact, I'm 1 song shy of being able to put out a 3rd baseball album, and that will also happen within the next 12 months. But of all the baseball stories I have ever heard, this one here is certainly the most bizarre. It's about a game that took place on June 12, 1970. A pitcher by the name of Doc Ellis thought his team had a day off, but they did not have a day off. In fact, they had moved on to a different city. And according to the newspaper, Doc Ellis was scheduled to pitch that night. Oh, there was one other small piece of information that is part of this story. Doc Ellis, the day before, had taken quite a bit of LSD, stayed up the entire night, and the next day took more. That's when he found out he had to pitch. Well, they did fly him from Los Angeles to San Diego, and Doc Ellis did make it to the ballpark just in time for the game, and he did, in fact, pitch that evening's ball game, and the man threw a no-hitter. And this is a true story, folks.
It was a lovely summer's morning, an off day in L.A. So thought one Doc Ellis, as he would later say. His girlfriend read the paper, she said, "Doc, this can't be right. Says here that you're pitching in San Diego tonight. We got to get you to the airport." So off Doc Ellis flew. His legs were a little bit wobbly and the rest of him was too. Took a taxi to the ballpark an hour before the game, gave a half-assed explanation, found the locker with his name. The organ in the upper deck played all the schmaltzy hits. You could hear it in the clubhouse while Doc was getting dressed. His sunglasses he reached for from his locker in a case. Doc Ellis put his jersey on, then he put them on his face. Time came to go on out there, down the corridor. The walls were a little bit wavy and there were ripples in the floor. Went out to the bullpen to do a bunch of stretches, loosen up a little, throw some warm-up pitches. And all rose for the national anthem. People took off their hats. Fireworks were exploding and the Cokes were already going flat. Doc was back in the dugout. So many things to watch. Some players spit tobacco juice and others grabbed their crotch. Then the umpire hollered, "Play ball," and so it came to be. Doc's Pirates batted first when they went down 1-2-3. Doc's catcher put his mask on and he handed Doc the ball, and it was 327 feet to the left and right field walls. Doc's Pirates took the field then, and Doc stood on the rubber, and he bounced a couple of pitches, and he bounced a couple of others. You might say about that day that it looked a little wild. The leadoff batter trembled, and nobody knew why. Doc Ellis smiled. We walk, eat, and hit a guy, all the things that people shout, especially the manager, but it did not take Doc out. Doc found himself a rhythm and a crazy little spin. Amazing things would happen when Doc Ellis zeroed in. Sometimes he saw the catcher, sometimes he did not. Sometimes he held a beach ball, other times it was a dot. Doc was tossing comets that were leaving trails of glitter. In the 7th inning stretch, he still had his no-hitter. So he turns to Cash, his buddy, says, "I got a no-no going." Speaking the unspeakable, and he goes back out there throwing. Bottom of the 9th, and he stood high upon the mound. 3 more outs to go, and he'd have his name in Cooperstown. Well, first up was Cannizzaro, and he flied out to a loo. Then Kelly grounded out for Dean, and the shortstop yelled, "That's 2." Must have been a madhouse, fans upon their feet. Little ones among them were standing on their seats. Oh, that would have brought up Herbal, but Spezio pinch hit. And he took a third strike looking, and officially that was it. It was a lovely summer's morning, an off day in L.A. So thought one Doc Ellis, as he would later say.
Thank you. Want to hear something crazy? You guys know who Todd Snyder is? You know, Todd Snyder and I both have songs about D.B. Cooper and Doc Ellis. Isn't that wild? So I've released 12 albums to date, and I recently started working on number 13. My most recent one is called Them and Us, and it was recorded about 5 blocks from here, in fact. Well, as you know, we have just 2 types of people in this country. Those who are us and those who are them, right? Except really and truly, we're all just one big us.
There's a standoff all across the Great Divide, with friends and family members on both sides. Someone struck a match, it would combust, scorching everyone, both them and us. It's raining dirty words and disrespect, just not having any positive effect. The bridges have collapsed because of rust. We can't reach each other, them and us. We've got our earplugs in and our blinders on, and we wonder, where have all the flowers gone? Where once there was a garden, cool and lush. All that's left here now is them and us. And I've never felt so lonely in this world as I do when all those banners are unfurled, and the airwaves are just spewing all that stuff about us and them. Look what it's done to us. Our differences are few and overblown, and this sometimes leads to punches being thrown. But there seems to be a few things to discuss, but you can't say a word to them or us. We write them off because of how they vote, and we write them off because they came on a boat. Turn our backs with contempt and with disgust at every one of them who isn't us. We identify them by the clothes they wear. We identify them by their skin and hair. And we look for any reason not to trust. Whatever about them is not like us. And I've never felt so lonely in this world as I do when all those banners are unfurled and the airwaves are just spewing all that stuff about us and them. Look what it's done to us. Thoughtful, decent people turning mean. If only all our gods could intervene. Well, there must be some controls they could adjust. Maybe they could make us whole, them and us. And I've never felt so lonely in this world as I do when all those banners are unfurled and the airwaves are just spewing all that stuff about us and them. Look what it's done to us. There's a standoff all across the Great Divide with friends and family members on both sides.
Thank you. I just cannot tell you how great it is to be playing a show with real people in the audience. And now I know, like, you know, the whole timing thing. This is probably something that you guys might never have thought of. But like, I live stream every week, right? And there's no applause at the end of the song, so my guitar's just ringing, and I have to, at some point, arbitrarily decide when to stop it, when to mute it, how much of a pause to take before I launch right into the next thing I'm going to say. Whereas with a live audience, it's all very natural. You know, the applause starts, the applause dies down, I speak. I'm trained. I used to be married, and my ex-wife absolutely detested my GPS. I've got the British woman's voice, Emily, chosen. And my ex-wife did not travel with me. And so, you know, we talk every day, and I would generally call when I was driving between towns, when I had a few hours. Yep. And Emily would constantly be shouting out orders and interrupting us, and my ex-wife used to refer to her as that other woman. Let me just fix this one up.
Well, that other woman, says my wife, she's who you trust with your life. You listen to her more than you do me. I said, you just tell me where to go, but how to get there, you don't know. She never asks if we can stop and pee. Yeah, I think that other gal knows best, north and south, east and west. I hardly pay attention anymore. In bed sometimes I hear her voice, British Emily, not Australian Joyce. And in my dreams we take a little detour. Now once she told me to turn onto a dirt road, but all night long it had just snowed, and not even the highway had been plowed. Well, I did not turn, it kept going straight, and she kept saying recalculate and make a U-turn when allowed. Well, sometimes we might disagree. All the while she yells at me. Nothing I yell back will shut her up. I call her a whore, I call her a witch. Call time out and I flip the switch for some peace and quiet. She can't interrupt. Well, satellite connection dropped. I put over and I stopped. Spaghetti Junction was coming up ahead. It's been years since I last had a map all spread out across my lap, and I wish it would have talked to me instead. Ramps to the left and ramps to the right. There wasn't another soul in sight that wasn't whizzing by at 75. My teeth were clenched, my knuckles white. That's when we had another big fight, and she refused to say which way to drive. Well, sometimes we might disagree. All the while she yells at me. Nothing I yell back will shut her up. Call her a whore, call her a witch. Call time out and I flip the switch for some peace and quiet. She can't interrupt. Well, now one time when I drove all day, just one road a long, long way, I got caught up in thinking, as you do. Well, she froze to death. I did not know I'd missed my exit hours ago, and I never even saw her face turn blue. Like a lot of old songs, this one here has a bit of an adult verse to it, and if that's something you think might upset you, just hold your ears for a second. Well, I mount her and I turn her on, and she tells me I'm her Don Juan in ways only my Emily can do. Oh, that's her out there in the car, the one who does know where we are, and it turns out all she needed was a screw. Well, sometimes we might disagree. All the while she yells at me. Nothing I yell back will shut her up. A Phillips head. Call her a whore, call her a witch. Call time out and I flip the switch for some peace and quiet. She can't interrupt. That other woman says my wife, she's who you trust with your life. You listen to her more than you do me. Well, it's true I do. She knows the route. She's the one that has the mute. She came with an extended warranty. My British Emily.
Oh, some of you have dirty minds. What was that? I couldn't hear that. Well, maybe I wasn't meant to hear that. Well, given the state of things in this country today, y'all know it's absolutely impossible to have a conversation about anything having to do with politics or a million other things with anybody that doesn't see things exactly as you do, right? And there's just no way in the world you're ever going to change anybody's mind, right? And I have tried every approach imaginable, and they all failed until I came up with this one. This works, folks. I've tried this. And I know this will work for you.
After 3 or 4 tries, I poked out his eyes, and that's how I got him to see. To get him to hear, I screamed in his ear. I gave him the 3rd degree. I sharply berated him and told him I hated him. I wasn't very kind. I shouted and cussed until I won his trust. Well, that's how I changed his mind. I shunned him, ignored him, I wouldn't look toward him. I only would give him my back. I accused him of lies, I would not compromise. I erased him after the fact. I was abrupt, I would often interrupt. We were volatile when combined. And in stating my case, I blew up in his face. And that's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. I blamed him, shamed him, insulted and inflamed him. That's how I changed his mind. Now this man was an ass. I was gonna let him pass, let him take a wide berth of me. But I was right and he was wrong, like I was telling him all along, trying to just get him to see. But he's a this and I'm a that, so we couldn't have a chat of the friendly and civilized kind. Round after round, I just ground him down. Well, that's how I changed his mind. I stomped on his toes and I punched him in the nose. I was using irony. So sure of the truth, I knocked out his tooth and I kicked him twice in the knee. I won over his heart with a poisonous dart, and he should have seen me unwind. Being overly cruel and with ridicule, oh, that's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. I blamed him, ashamed him, insulted and inflamed him. That's how I changed his mind. So I called him a fool, challenged him to a duel. I threw my white glove in his face. 20 paces and I shot, and I must have hit the spot. Anyway, that's how I pleaded my case. Well, I won in the end, after making him bend, and after all the papers were signed. In the end, I won, yeah, that's how it was done. Well, that's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. I blamed him, shamed him, insulted and inflamed him. That's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. I blamed him, shamed him, I might have even maimed him. That's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind. That's how I changed his mind.
Works every time. Folks, I don't know about you, but I hate disco music. I can remember growing up as a kid when all of the great songs on AM pop radio were like Neil Young and Bob Dylan and the band and Arlo Guthrie and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. And, you know, all the great music was still considered top 40. Then disco hit, and all the great music got pushed onto the FM dial, the very far left end of the FM dial, like the 89 point something and the 90 point something. Stations that we didn't even know existed at the time, unless you were into classical music or jazz, then you would have known about FM. So I always thought, you know, just the very worst of disco. I watched it push the singer-songwriter out of being in style. And so I always wanted to get even with disco music. But a fellow by the name of Bill Veeck, who happened to be the former owner of the Chicago White Sox, he beat me to it. He had a special promotion back in the 1970s, I guess 79 maybe, or is that when it was? Yep. They had a Twilight doubleheader, and this was in conjunction with a radio station, a rock station, whose call letters were, whose number on the dial was 98 point something. And so if you brought a disco LP to the ballpark, you could get in for 98 cents to the game, which of course meant that all these non-baseball fans packed the stadium. And this is what happened that day. I'm mixing up the intro with another song, though. I have to remember how this one starts.
Good riddance to the 70s when disco was the rage. 12-inch vinyl singles, lip syncing from the stage. The White Sox near the cellar, there were mostly empty seats. There was the usual sarcasm from the writers on the beat. The owner of the White Sox was a fella named Bill Veck, master of promotions, things you never would expect. Guy who signed a midget and then sent him up to bat. This time, signed off on something even crazier than that. In between games, a twilight doubleheader, rock and roll DJ would blow up disco records. If you brought an LP and dropped it in the crate, you'd only have to pay 98 cents. Admission at the gate, or the buses to the ballpark. You didn't see too many kids, didn't see too many baseball caps or many baseball mitts. People had been drinking long before they paid their fares. Traffic on the freeway backed up to O'Hare. Comiskey Park, Chicago didn't have as many seats as was needed to accommodate the thousands in the streets. They started climbing fences, they started climbing poles. They had come to conquer in the name of rock and roll, but a slight miscalculation they had underestimated by just how many people disco was so deeply hated. More police were needed, but nobody thought to call. The person on the sidewalk burned a John Travolta doll. It was no less than a miracle. No one was killed or maimed by disco record frisbees throughout the opening game. Some shattered on the dugouts, some knifed into the grass. Some numbskulls roamed around looking to kick somebody's ass. Well, the White Sox lost the first game, whether anyone noticed it or not. There was trouble brewing in the air, but all you could smell was pot. The crowd was growing restless for the real show to begin. When the grounds crew came hauling all those disco records in, the Jeep DJ rode it on, stopped in center field. Driver left the motor running, left his hands upon the wheel. 1 foot on the gas pedal, 1 foot on the brake, while Lorelei, the supermodel, she just smiled and waved. The crowd was in a frenzy. They were yelling, "Disco sucks!" It was very nearly rapture when they blew the records up. Sky High went to pieces. Some landed in St. Paul. Most people yelled, "Woohoo!" and then drank more alcohol. About then, a bunch of knuckleheads, they jumped the right field wall. Jeep got through it just in time before the free-for-all. Must have been a couple thousand of them tearing up the grass, lighting things on fire. More than half an hour passed. Bill Vecchi stood at home plate, his face as red as beets. He pleaded through the PA system, "Go back to your seats." The crowd began to mimic him with a "Go back to your seats." Hey! A couple having sex at second base did not obey. Well, the cops showed up on horseback encircling the riot. Things calmed down in a hurry. Things pretty soon got quiet. The second game got forfeited because the ball field was a wreck. But disco was eradicated, partly thanks to Mr. Veck. Good riddance to the 70s when disco was the rage.
Thanks very much. I was going to try to play the last little bit of Ring My Bell, but then I thought better of it. Oh, God, I got to tell you the story. I worked in a retail store in Philadelphia back in 1979. I had just dropped out of college, moved back in with my parents, and I found this job at a discount electronics store, downtown Philadelphia. Kind of store, there'd be like 12 of them on every block for, 8 or 10 blocks, and they were all competing with one another. And they all sold boom boxes and all that stuff. And the one that I worked at sold disco records. And this was back when they'd press one single song on a big 12-inch piece of vinyl. You know, what a waste of vinyl on a couple of levels. And anyway, we had a stereo inside the store and speakers in the store and out on the sidewalk. And we were only allowed to play whatever the current number one song was. We had to leave that arm up on the turntable so that when the needle got to the end of the song, it lifted back up and went to the beginning of the song and replayed that song. Well, Ring My Bell at that time was the number one song, and I'm pretty sure Ring My Bell was number one for more than 6 weeks, something like that. So let's just say for argument's sake it's a 3-minute song. I would have heard it 20 times every hour. Times 8 hours a day is 160 times in a day. 6-day work week. You do the math. I can't even count that high. That's how many times I heard Ring My Bell. That's the real reason I hate disco music. So I want to sing another baseball song. This one is about a career minor league pitcher. It's a true story. His name was Brian Mazzone. He pitched in 5 different countries. He switched teams 20 different times in his career. He pitched in Mexico, Venezuela, Korea, Canada, the USA. At the age of 31, he was in the Philadelphia Phillies organization, playing for the AAA farm club. And one of the major league pitchers developed a sore arm and had to miss a start. And so he got called up for his very first cup of coffee. That's what they call it when you get a taste of the major leagues. He was 31 years old, and this is what happened that day.
There was orange on the radar. In some places it was red. You saw it on the TV. Well, he was still in bed. Room service brought him breakfast. Some good coffee as well. Get used to staying at a major league hotel. Well, it was raining hard that morning. The whole day it would pour. And you would just stare out the window from the 27th floor. The night before at supper, some joint in Buffalo. Skipper called to tell him he was going to the show. Text messages and emails were lighting up his phone. All his friends and family, from everyone he'd ever known. His folks flew in from Boston, and his wife just made her flight. They all got there the next day to see him pitch that night. So he put his big league pants on, and he tied his big league shoes, while a couple of big leaguers were giving interviews. His name was in the lineup. He was mentioned on the news. He'd knocked around a dozen years for this. he'd even pitched in Veracruz. And so he walked out through that tunnel to stand on a big lake mound. The tears mixed with the raindrops, and he felt like he might drown. He squeezed the big league baseball, ran his fingers along the seams. The rain was cruel and stung him as it washed away his dreams. Well, it was flooded in the dugout. It was a lonely place to sit. He thought of going to Korea. Or maybe it was time to quit. And how next time they need a pitcher, they'll probably call up some kid. And every time thereafter, that's exactly what they did. Well, you can say that's baseball, especially if you never played. But for the guy who worked his ass off and whose dues were overpaid, well, this was all he'd ever wanted. Ever since the 7th grade. Congratulations were in order, but condolences were paid. Well, that tarp was never lifted, and that storm never let up. It's like he got his cup of coffee without the coffee cup. They let him keep his jersey. They boxed it soaking wet, and that was as close to the majors as he would ever get. No, that tarp was never lifted, and that storm never let up. It's like he got his cup of coffee without the coffee cup.
Thank you. I have a few more for you. And once again, if you're interested in taking home a CD, you can just help yourself if you like. I do have the means to take credit cards on my iPhone if you'd rather do that. But if you would prefer to pay cash, they're all $15 except for the double live one called 2 Sets with the black cover. That's $20. So you can just, there's a bunch of 5s in the bottom of that bowl. You can help yourself to change. There's an email list as well. And I also printed out the information for, if you don't want to get a CD today, but you'd prefer to order one from my website, it's got my web address. It's also got a link for purchasing digital downloads if you prefer that medium. And as well, there's a link for how to support me on patreon.com. And if you're not familiar with Patreon, it is a wonderful platform where fans can support artists that they like on a monthly basis, and you choose whatever amount you want. Some artists have different tiers, so that if you pledge this much per month, you have access to certain things, but if you pledge this much, you get access to these things. And I don't do it that way. I give everybody equal access, so even if you pledged $1 a month, you'd get the same access as somebody that's supporting me by, considerably more than that. But what it does is it gives me a certain base of income that I can rely on month to month. And in these times, this is, I think this is aside from the 9 gigs I did in Denmark in September, this is my 3rd concert since March, and this is what I do full time for a living. So, yeah. So there are ways, if you're interested in supporting me personally or artists in general, there are ways to do that. There are some URLs. My weekly Sunday live stream as well. 2 o'clock to my Facebook page and 4 o'clock to my YouTube channel every week. And that's all I'm going to say about all that. But Christmas time is almost upon us, and this is a song that I wrote for WNCW, our local station here, 6 years ago, I guess. I had just moved here, and they invited me to be part of this on-air Christmas party that they were having. I don't think they ever had it again after that, and this song might be the reason for that. But they invited maybe 50 different musicians from the upstate of South Carolina and eastern Tennessee and southeastern Virginia and all across North Carolina. Brought everybody into the studio for the day, fed us, and we were all supposed to sing a Christmas song each. Well, I told them I'm Jewish and I don't know any Christmas songs, and they made the mistake of saying, well, that's okay. Why don't you just write something? So I was determined to make them sorry they had said that. And I wrote this song, which it turns out they love. They loved it that day. They've been playing it every year throughout the holiday season. Funny thing was, though, this was a song I literally thought I would play that one time. It would have a shelf life of one single day. I had no idea whether it was any good or not. I figured it's probably okay for, showing up the next day with and singing once. But I had no idea it was going to take on the life that it has. So this is called On Christmas I Got Nothing. If I'd only written that part.
My family never roasted chestnuts on an open fire. We never went around the neighborhood singing carols with the choir. Never went to midnight mass or sat on cold hard pews. My family, we had different views. Well, I never had to be good, just for goodness sake. And on Christmas Eve, I did not try to keep myself awake, listening for sleigh bells and looking for a mouse. Santa always skipped over our house. Jimmy got a train set with a shiny new caboose. Billy in a rector set with nuts and bolts and screws. Tammy got a kit for making cheese fondues. But on Christmas, I got nothing, 'cause we were Jews. Well, I never put up trimmings, 'cause I never had a tree. Would not know a mistletoe from a torpedo's knee. Never sat on Santa's lap, but hey, if Jesus was a Jew, wouldn't that make Santa be one too? I used to hate when it was cold enough for Christmas to be white. Never hung a wreath of holly, never strung the yard with lights. Those other houses look so pretty, but the electricity they must have used. No, we lit candles, 'cause we were Jews. Jenny got a bike, she had to wait till spring to use. Tommy from across the street, he got his front tooth. Joshua got a horn so he could learn to play the blues. Horns, oy, I already had some.
I think I forgot a verse. Oh well. What's that? That's it. Yep. That was the verse. Yep. Thank you. The brain is a lot like a hard drive. There's a finite amount of space for memory. And when it's full, like, I've got 12 albums out, and every time I write a new song, there's a logjam in there, and something has to get pushed out to make room for the new song. So this song has a great story behind it. It's about a man whose name was Adolfo Kaminsky, and during World War II, he became known as the Paris Forger. He was a teenager living in Paris and working in the garment industry. And the partisans fighting the Nazis found out about him, found out that he had the scientific knowledge of inks and dyes and fabrics, what it would take to cause a certain ink or dye to set in a particular type of fabric, and just as importantly, what it would take to unset the same ink and dye from various fabrics. And that made him a perfect forger of documents, which was critical. And so they recruited him, and his work was so secretive he could not even tell his own wife or daughter. He worked with one single handler from the partisans. He'd meet with this handler every so often in a public place, and they'd swap envelopes. And he'd be given these impossible orders like, we need 30 passports, or we need 200 passports by tomorrow morning. Well, Adolfo was able to forge 30 passports in an hour, which is incredible. But then he realized for every hour he might sleep, it would cost 30 people their lives. And so he didn't sleep. And he would just work through the night. They rented him an apartment a few blocks from where he lived with his family, and he would go there every night pretending to be doing his printing job work when in fact he was doing these forgeries. And he enabled thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people to escape to freedom. At the end of World War II, he continued to forge documents that allowed people to escape repressive regimes around the world, right on through the end of the Vietnam War. Lots of conflicts he helped people through. Well, at the age of 89, he decided he needed to tell somebody. He didn't want to take this to the grave with him, so he told his daughter, Sarah. And Sarah wrote a book called A Forger's Life, which I read, and it caused me to want to write this song. So this is called The Forger.
Up on the third floor, I used to rent a room. Got no fresh air. You could get dizzy from the fumes. I'd spend the nights in there. Maybe I'd sleep a few winks. Clear a place somewhere between the papers and the inks. I had a printing press. It was my Tommy gun. And I dreamed I'd ambush them whenever it would run. I couldn't shoot a man, but this was what I could do. And with my documents, the guards would have waved them through. I didn't know them, I never met them. How could I turn away and just forget them? Still can picture some of their faces. They were desperate to leave for safer places. I was an artisan, a counterfeiter. I had a steady hand, didn't get the jitters. One day the partisans told me my skills were needed, 'cause there was madness on the rise that had to be defeated. I doctored names, altered their ages. I put a different place of birth upon the pages. I made them businessmen, I made them teachers. I made them someone else with all the same features. I didn't know them, I never met them. How could I turn away and just forget them? I still can picture some of their faces. They were desperate to leave for safer places. I'd meet my handler in busy cafes. We would trade envelopes and go our separate ways. No time for small talk, too many lives at stake. Passports to reproduce, all night I'd be awake. I worked in secrecy, nobody knew of this. Not even my daughter or my wife. There was just too much risk. They said I worked too much. I couldn't tell them why. But now I have to tell someone before I die. I didn't know them. I never met them. How could I turn away and just forget them? I still can picture some of their faces. They were desperate to leave for safer places. They were desperate to leave for safer places.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for coming tonight. I have one song left, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to flip-flop my encore with my last song. So I'm going to do my encore now. Then I'm not going to leave the stage and play that game where I stick my head on the other side of the curtain for a couple of seconds and you clap and then I come back. You know, we're all tired of that, right? We know the routine. So I'm just going to stay right here. I'm going to play my encore now, and then I'm going to finish with my last song. And for my encore, I want to play you my oldest song that I still sing. I wrote this back in 1981. This song is going to be 40 years old next year. I think of it as a hitchhiking song because I wrote it the day that I arrived in San Francisco after hitchhiking from Philadelphia. And of course my mother was not too happy with this idea of me hitchhiking and tried to give me the money to take the Greyhound bus instead. And I had to tell her Woody Guthrie never would have taken money from his mother for the Greyhound bus, you know. So this song has had quite a life of its own. It's been recorded by a number of people through the years. Kathy Mattea recorded it in a film. Sarah Hickman has recorded it. Our very own David Lamott has recorded it. The African Children's Choir of Uganda has recorded it. Maybe it's in tune. No, it's not in tune. Sorry, folks. Electronics are lying today. That was it. Okay, I got to tell you something. There's two entirely different schools of thought on tuning guitars. One is you find the one string that's out of tune and you tune it. The other school is you find that one string that's out of tune and you tune the other 5 to it. Which is what I think I just did.
Well, I hope I see you later That's my ride that just pulled over. And it sure was good to know you. So go answer your calling. Go and fill somebody's cup. And if you see an angel falling, won't you stop and help them up? We are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. We keep each other going, and we show each other signs. Sometimes you stumble, sometimes you'll just lie down. Sometimes you'll get lonely with all these people around. You might shiver when the wind blows, and you might get blown away. You might lose a little color, you might lose a little faith. We are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. We keep each other going, and we show each other signs. So thank you for the water. Thought I was gonna die out here in the desert, but you quenched my thirst. Let's break a little bread together. Got a little manna. It was a gift for someone who was passing by and offered me a lift. We are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. We keep each other going, and we show each other signs.
Well, I want to say thanks to the gang at ISIS. Thanks to our great sound man back there. Wonderful night. So, how many of you are on Facebook? I don't mean right this second. Most people these days are on Facebook. I was a latecomer to the party. I wanted nothing to do with it. But I got persuaded by John McCutcheon. Do you know John McCutcheon? Not too many people can get away with giving me one of these. But John McCutcheon one day was giving me one of these for not being on social media. This was a good 10 years ago now. And, well, I admire and respect John very much. And if John McCutcheon says I need to be on social media, then okay, I need to be on social media. And, anyway, I have a lot of fun with Facebook. Like I said, I resisted it for a long time. When I finally broke down and started participating, within like literally 2 weeks, I had 2,000 friends. It was insane. It was insane. So that's the name of this song here, 2,000 Friends. Facebook caps you on your personal page at 5,000 friends, and I'm always right around 5,000. So if you try to become my friend and it says I can't take on any more friends, come back the next day or the day after, because people also unfriend me. But I have a music page, and that's really what That's unlimited, and that's where I live stream to. So if you follow me or like that page, you'll get a notification anytime I go live on Sundays, which again is 2 p.m. Or if it's easier for you to watch at 4 p.m. on YouTube, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then you'll get an email letting you know when I go live there. So this is called 2,000 Friends. Thank you again very much for being here. It's been a delight to sing to real living human beings, even the ones wearing masks. I have no idea what you might be saying behind that mask. Maybe you're cursing me out the entire show. I have no idea, but it's great to see you.
Sometimes I sit here in the dark, just the light of the screen. Maybe I don't get dressed, have a little more caffeine. Sometimes I stay up late, time goes by. I say what's on my mind, and I hope for a reply. I never stay away long, I start missing all my friends. I post my photographs, I use my very best lens. Sometimes the comments never come, sometimes I sit and I wait. Oh, won't you please like me? Is there someone who can relate? Nobody ever writes me letters, I don't know why I have a phone. I got a couple thousand friends now, and I don't feel so alone. Sometimes I drop them a line, sometimes they think of me too. They want to know if I'm okay in just a sentence or two. And I know who cooked Italian, I know who got new shoes, I know who had to pull a tranny, who's away on a cruise. I know who got that dreaded letter, I know who just switched shampoos, I know who's using smiley faces, and I know who's got the blues. I know who likes what, I know who's friends with who, I know what everybody just did, what they're planning to do. I know who's having a birthday, I know who just lost their job, I know it rained in Sarasota for a little while and then it stopped. I found a lot of old classmates, people I once knew. Everybody went their own way, will do. Some of them got wealthy, and some are living hand to mouth. Some of them are up north still, and some have settled in the south. All of my old flames got married, some they got divorced, and of the ones who have fallen, some never got back on the horse. And the ones who did have children, none of them look like me. I hope that everybody's happy, I hope that everybody's free. I know who likes what, I know who's friends with who, I know what everybody just did, what they're planning to do. I know who just lost their father and who's decided to adopt. I know it rained in Sarasota for a little while and then it stopped. Prayers, my friend in Uganda, my friends in Israel and Iran, Nova Scotia, Ireland and Denmark, Lithuania and Japan. Well, I hope someday to meet them, their place or mine. But for now it makes me happy when I see them here online. And I know who got a puppy, I know whose rose bushes died, and the ones who own ponies. Sometimes I tell him I can ride. You know, I flirted with some women. Well, these days, how can you tell? Some of them could have been men. And then there was the time when Elvis asked if he could be my friend. I know who likes what, I know who's friends with who. I know what everybody just did, what they're planning to do. I know who's fighting cancer. Sometimes I just start to sob. I know it rains in Sarasota for a little while and then it stops. I know it rains in Sarasota for a little while and then it stops. I know it rains in Sarasota for a little while and then it stops. Thank you all very much. Thanks again.